Good morning, folks.
You did that right when I pressed it. That was perfect.
Good morning, folks. Wait, did they get the whole, or was it like, are they gonna hear a morning?
Let me look at the audio.
That's okay.
They'll get it. They'll
Okay.
get the whole thing.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Josh.
How are you?
I'm great, man. I'm real good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I meant to show you pictures of the burrito that I had last night.
Oh man, I totally forgot you guys went out. How was it?
It was great. Good.
You got
one of our goals for 2021 for both of us was to have date nights, monthly date nights for Mandy and I. So
nice.
We went for many years of no date nights whatsoever, and we have done, I think, since November. We went November, December, January, and now February.
Nice.
Consistent date nights. So.
Are you gonna try to go somewhere different every time, or does that really matter? Do you want to try somewhere different?
So we're actually caught between a rock and a hard place, because when you like what you like, you want to just go to where you know.
Yeah.
How about that? Rhyming skills. So we're balancing the desire to branch out a little bit, because anyone that knows us knows that we are very in the bubble. We don't venture out too far or anything. But I also don't want to go somewhere that's going to suck and then be disappointed.
But that's part of the fun.
No, it's not part of the fun.
That's part of the risk.
No. I take my risks in owning businesses.
Yeah, not eating Mexican food.
Yeah, not eating Mexican food.
Do you guys like Thai food?
That's one thing that we've never had, actually. And Rob has told us a good, I think it was in Brandon, that he said there's a good Thai place. We've just never tried it yet. But that is one place that I would, or one style of food that I haven't that I would love to try. I do like spicier type food, and I think that I would like it. So, and Rob said that I would. So I'm pretty trusting of what Rob recommends from a food perspective.
I'm probably gonna offend some sort of foodie. I'll probably offend Chinese people, Thai people with this, but do you like Chinese food?
I like what is known in America as Chinese food.
Okay, if you like that and you like spicy, you'll probably like Thai food.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you like Indian food?
I've only had it one or two times. One time was at Tabrez's house, and it was, whoa, buddy.
Hot.
It was hot, and they said they dumbed it down really low, put basically no spice in it, and I thought that my brain was going to explode out of my cranium. This was years ago, but it's one of those foods that is so good, you can't stop eating it, but then there's the other side that is this is so hot, unbelievably hot, so it's like this, you just kind of go back and forth.
What was just coming up on 2 years ago, actually, we did the post-open ceremony at the ranch, do you remember?
Yes.
And everybody brought it was
yes.
And he brought
some chicken.
And he's like, yeah, it's not that spicy. And it's like, dude, no, this is really spicy, but delicious, so good.
So good.
Yeah.
My favorite is, my just favorite food to eat or place to go is always a good steakhouse. I just have always liked a good steakhouse, so.
I guess because of the Super Bowl this past weekend.
Yep. The Bucks won. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
Tom Brady.
Tampa Bay.
Did you watch any of the game?
I watched the first half, and I was like, this is over. And at the halftime show, I was like, I'll watch on YouTube. And then I would periodically just check in on the score as the game progressed, and I'm like, oh, this is just getting worse.
Yeah.
Here's my thing is I don't like watching as soon as the clock strikes 0 at the end of the fourth quarter when it puts the cameras on the losing team.
That's my favorite moment. I used to live for those moments when I was in college, and we'd be playing a team that I just hated, and they would show those loser faces until it came to our team, and the show, I was like, man, don't do that.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess because Super Bowl was this last weekend, a lot of celebrities were going to Burns and Charlie's and stuff like that.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So they were posting pictures and videos of Burns and all the different nice restaurants that we have in Tampa Bay, baby.
Tampa Bay, that's right. Cool. Upcoming events, we'll get these out of the way real quick. Number one, we are having some gym owners from around the state come to CFG on Saturday, so we will not be open on Saturday. That is for, I'm sure people that have listened for a while, for our 2 listeners that have, they remember last year, at the tail end of the year, we had the 2 Brain Summit. We actually have 3 events with 2 Brain now that we are going to be hosting. In the first and fourth quarter, they're just kind of what we're calling these little regional meetups, so it's much smaller scale, one day, a couple presentations, just to get together with other gym owners. And then in the middle of the summer will be like the big 2-day event, keynote speaker, Jocko Willink.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyways, this Saturday, we have the little regional Saturday, so we will not have class. Don't show up on Saturday.
Or do, and then just watch run outside.
Yeah, and then just look in the window.
I would say go run a 5K on a trail, because chances are you weren't here for it.
That's right. And then a couple weeks after that, the 27th, the gym will be open, of course, but we, more importantly, have the Snatch Clinic on that Saturday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. with Coach Gene. So if the Olympic weightlifting movement, the snatch is something that you would like to spend some time working on, then invest in yourself and come and do that clinic. I think it's $59.
Yeah.
For 2 hours of hands-on work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Can't beat it.
Can't beat it.
I actually had, just like with the trail run, had a lot of people asking questions and showing interest in that. So if you're one of those people, chances are I've already called you out in class or said something to you. This would just be a good opportunity for all levels. Like whether you've never touched a barbell before, or if you have been doing this for 10 years. Like
right.
This is a pretty cool opportunity from a great coach. So
awesome.
Check that snatch clinic.
Cool.
Listener questions, man. We're
Let's
gonna
get into it. Let us get into it.
So
I didn't even really look ahead. I kind of have an idea of what we're going to be talking about. So this is going to be true old school, just stream of consciousness. So settle in, people.
It's funny because Sundays we'll spend like the hour before the 9 a.m. class talking about the podcast outline and typing notes out. Okay, I think we should go over this. And today it was like, all right, like as you start the live feed, they'll probably catch that as like, I haven't even read the notes. Like, let's get right into it.
Let's just do it.
All right, so listener question number 1 for today. This is actually one we had last week.
Yeah, but we couldn't get to it.
We couldn't get to it, and so we saved it for today. This is a good one. Why do we normalize poor nutrition behaviors? And so a little background behind this question. I tend to have a habit of going over the background behind it. Is this came from somebody who was present in a class, and in the class people weren't like going crazy with it, but talking about nutrition behaviors. And I think it was about the time Girl Scout cookies were being sold.
Yes.
So
Thin mints.
And so I actually heard this in a couple of classes, just because I mean everybody's around, as you know, Girl Scouts are going around selling their cookies, talking about, oh, here are my favorites. I can easily crush a sleeve of this, or I can eat an entire box of this. And it kind of occurred to this person. It was like, why are we normalizing these poor nutritional behaviors despite the cookies being extremely tasty? Why aren't we getting excited about the amount of fruits or vegetables we're eating, or how much protein we're eating, or the healthy choices we're making?
Yeah.
So why are we normalizing these poor nutrition behaviors, Josh?
Well, I think that we could probably zoom out even a little bit further and say, why do we normalize poor behaviors? Ooh. And that could be with anything, whether it's nutrition, stress management. So like, oh, this dealing with this, and I'm going to avoid it, I'm not going to address it. Poor, behaviors within movement. Oh, all I did was lay around all day. Oh yeah, well I laid around for 3 days, and it's like a competition to see who could be the laziest, right? So same thing with sleep. And I was actually re-listening to a clip from a podcast that we did a couple of months ago, where I was just joking about the grind and hustle mentality, and I said something about people celebrating. Well, I only sleep 5 hours. Well, I only sleep 3 hours a night. Well, I don't even sleep. So we're kind of normalizing these. It's kind of hard and cuts deep for some people to say that it's like a poor behavior, and I know how that sounds. So, but just kind of stick with us. Why do we normalize that? I think the thing that first pops up into my head is that, number one, when you hear people having these conversations, it's just a social phenomenon known as commiserating. Mm-hmm. So somebody is sharing a little bit of, some struggles that they're having, but they're trying to do it in a comedic, just poking fun at themselves, self-deprecating humor. So you're kind of, opening yourself up, and if you're a person that is being opened up to, you don't want to just slam the door in their face and say, well, stop doing that, you moron, and you might actually get to the goals that you want to get to. That's probably not the best way to interact and get friends and, to just have some fun with people. So, that's commiserating, right? When you get a group of people together, and it serves a couple of purposes just in social construct, right? It's a bonding mechanism, and it's also a coping mechanism. So when you are somebody that is making behaviors, and I don't want to say poor in this sense, I just want to say when you are making behavioral choices that are not in service of your long-term goals, whatever they are, I don't even care what they are, but when they're not in service of your long-term goals, you know that you are, at a really, really deep level, letting yourself down. And so one way that you cope with that is to kind of poke fun at it, because it makes it less serious, and it's almost like you're okaying it. I'm not saying that it is okaying it, but I think that is one way that humans have evolved to kind of deal with, disappointment of self and things like that. From a bonding perspective, it is most certainly a way that people get together in groups and share stories, and that's really the way that relationships are moved forward, or one of the ways is through storytelling, in relating to one another and being relatable. So commiserating does serve those functions. One of the things that you have to be careful with, though, is that you don't continue to go down that road day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, because then the only thing that you're ever going to be talking about is these negative circumstances, right? And so that's something that you have to be aware of. So it's one thing to jump in, have a funny story, and then go on about your business. But if you heard this and it triggered you, or made the hairs in the back of your neck stand up, oh man, I don't know that I really like how this is phrased, I would just think a little bit more about the conversations that you're having. And I actually did this years ago because somebody challenged me to do it, but keep a little notepad with you, or you can do it on your phone. I'm old school though, and I like the just the old school way of writing it down. And take note of all of the things that you commiserate or complain about throughout the day, and then take note of how many times you laugh or smile throughout the day, and talk about things positively. Just do it for a week, and I guarantee you, even the most positive, people say that I'm, hopelessly optimistic all the time, and I most certainly am, but even the most positive people will be surprised at how much their thoughts actually default to the negative. And I think the first step, if this did kind of trigger you, is just to start with some awareness.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you and I have talked about it 1,000 times before. We talked about it last week as we were discussing the answer to this question before ultimately not making it into the show, is all of the lifestyle factors. So whether it is nutrition, or it is your movement, or it's your stress management, or it's your sleep. I think another big one is alcohol falls into that, but that could be more nutrition. And it's important to touch on all those, because we've all done it. When we all still currently do it, it might even be subconsciously when it comes out of our mouths that, yeah, it's we might have not made the best choices, whether it was on purpose or not, and we're looking for some sort of validation behind it.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And I think a lot of people might get that validation. Well, I only slept 5 hours last night. Well, I slept 4.5. And it's okay, well, that makes my 5 hours not seem as bad. So when I get 5 hours again tonight, like it won't be as bad. And so now you're in this bad loop of only getting 5 hours of sleep a night, right? Whereas, man, I slept 5 hours and this might be uncomfortable. It's like, why? You know, instead of the other person going, well, I slept 4.5 or I slept 8, you know, making the other person feel better or worse, it's like, well, why didn't you sleep as much? What's going on, man? Like,
right.
And that's normally like, and that's always been uncomfortable for me as a coach, and I'm getting better at it, is when somebody tells me, I didn't sleep well last night, I got 4 or 5 hours, is I'll go, why? Like, what happened? Like, was it on purpose? Were you staying up late? What's going on?
Yeah.
And it's still uncomfortable for me, but I've gotten better at it. And so I think maybe if you hear somebody saying that they had some sort of poor lifestyle behavior, choice, whatever it might be, and again, we got to be careful with the language, poor lifestyle. Maybe if it didn't work out as best as it could have, just ask that person why. Like, what's going on? Because that can happen between individuals rather than just a coach in a client relationship.
I think the other thing to consider for folks too is that we're not harping on, you know, oh my gosh, you can't share these things or joke about them or laugh about them.
Yeah.
But I do think that you need to understand how powerful it is, you know, in the mind, like subconsciously, when that is all you, if that is the majority, I won't say all because I don't like those black and white statements, but if the majority of those conversations fall back to that, I know that you're probably trying to tell yourself a story like, oh no, but that's not how I really am. No, it is, because you've shown that to be the pattern of behavior. So let's go back to the sleep example. So somebody got 5 hours of sleep and you're like, man, you know, why is that? You know, why did you only get 5? And, oh, well, I was up late, it was the Super Bowl, so we didn't get home, then we had to get the kids ready for bed, and I'm just speaking, like, personally. We had to get the kids ready for bed, get them to bed, and Monday comes, and you still got to get up and do the work that needs to be done. Oh, okay, cool. So that's like a one-off. But then in subsequent conversations, if I find that it's always something that is keeping you up, well, then that is your lifestyle. Now, it doesn't mean that it is a poor lifestyle, just the 5 hours of sleep. What that means is we need to have a conversation on, okay, is this in service to the life that you want to be living? Do you want to only be getting 5 hours of sleep? And if you say yes, great. Then don't complain about it. And I'm not saying that you are, but that's always my rule of thumb. If you're happy, awesome. Then be happy with who you are and what you're doing.
That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, but if the opposite is true, if you're unhappy or you're still working towards something, then don't complain about something if you're not willing to hear and then make the change that somebody is potentially suggesting to you.
A lot of members at CFG and some non-members are in the middle of a consistency challenge right now, and I feel like what we say could also be interpreted as like, man, this one night I got 5 hours of sleep. I blew it. Like, now I'm not going to reach my goals. And I just want to remind people that we're always looking for consistency rather than perfection.
Yes.
Right? So I know just through conversation with you all the time, and because I can see your Whoop data, how much you're sleeping every night, like you're always getting 8 to 9 hours, right? So I know when you tell me, like on Monday, you told me, you're like, yeah, I'm kind of tired today, feeling kind of slow, like didn't sleep, you know, like you just said, had to get home from watching the Super Bowl, put the kids down, like I didn't sleep as much. I know, like, as the coach, I'm not going to grill you about it. Like, you just acknowledged what the issues were. I know this isn't happening every single night. This isn't happening even every weekend night. This isn't even happening more than once a month for you.
Right.
So I'm like, Josh knows what he did. Like, I know he'll fix it tonight. He'll probably get 10 hours tonight, right?
Yeah.
And we can move on. So I just want to remind people that if any of this is resonating with you, and like you do have some behavioral choices or anything that happens every once in a while, like, it's okay.
Yeah, those are the times that you need to give yourself some grace. So if you go to a party, a Super Bowl party, and you've been really killing it on your nutrition, but you want to have the treats, or you want to have the pizza, or the wings, or all the above, then great, have it. And don't try to frame it as like, oh, this is my cheat, or you know, I'm only gonna. No. Enjoy it. And then the next day, you go right back to the consistency that you had already been mastering, right? Now, if it becomes a pattern where it's like, well, I already fell off the wagon, I might as well just go full tilt, you need to have an honest conversation with yourself and figure out, is the expectation, or the way that I like to put it, is the ambition that I have, is it being matched with the actions that I am ready, willing, and able to take?
Right.
And if it's no, great, then recalibrate. Either recalibrate the action or the ambition or the expectation that you have of yourself. If it's yes, then cool. Give yourself some grace and then pick it up the very next day. It's like if you forget to brush your teeth one morning when you wake up, you don't just stop brushing your teeth forever. Guess what? You do it that night or the next morning whenever you get up.
Right. I know some people that would just do it in the middle of the day. Like if they're like, oh, I didn't do it this morning, like they'll just go and do it in the middle of the day. And it's like,
yeah, first of all, that's disgusting. If you can operate for more than 45 seconds in the morning without brushing your teeth, I mean, you're walking around with furry teeth. That is just gross.
Tongue too. Friendly reminder.
Oh,
brush your tongue, man. Brush your tongue. If you don't already, start doing it. Brush your tongue.
All right.
This kind of last note I had is this kind of brings me back to what we were talking about in terms of like who is an athlete and sacrifices and things we were talking about is relating that to perfection and consistency is like in the long run, it's not worth it to be perfect if you're sacrificing your social life or things you want to do to reach certain goals, because those goals are reachable. Like if your goal is to lose 10 pounds, right? You don't have to sacrifice eating what you like to eat 365 days a year. Maybe you can sacrifice it 300 days a year, 330 days a year. Who knows? You know, maybe we do like a 312 days a year, maybe a 1 day a week to where you can enjoy something. But again, as Josh said, like we just want to treat it more as consistent behavior that you're following, rather than okay, I'm going to be perfect all week and then have a cheat meal, because that just results in a bad relationship with whatever behavior you're attributing it to, and that's a slippery slope that we could get down that rabbit hole for an hour if we wanted to.
Yes.
So, punchline is, hey, be consistent. Eat consistently well, sleep consistently well, move consistently well, manage your stress consistently well, and you'll be good.
There you go. Normalize that.
Normalize consistent behavior.
Yes.
All right, so moving on. We have listener question number two. So this one is another good one. This question, short and sweet, is, are CrossFit and HIIT training the same thing? HIIT training is kind of redundant. Are CrossFit and HIIT the same thing? HIIT stands for high intensity interval training. Are they the same thing, Josh?
No.
All right, next question.
Yeah, next question. I'll let you start this one, and then I'll.
Yeah. So they teach in the level 1 that the definition of CrossFit is constantly varied functional movement executed at a high intensity. We're just gonna have the tagline functional movement today, because functional movement itself is so hard to define, because what is functional? Everything is functional, but at the same time, nothing could be functional.
Right.
Because when are you ever going to have to do a thruster or a squat with a dump, right? So functional movement, just think of movements you do in the gym.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast, it's probably movements you do in here. Think of that as functional movement. CrossFit is defined as constantly varied functional movement executed at a high intensity. Constantly varied, now that we've talked about functional movement, constantly varied, this means this changes on the day-to-day. So in terms of CrossFit style programming, and you can see this with their main site workouts, you're probably not going to see the same workout again for years unless it is some sort of benchmark workout.
Right.
So unless you're doing a named workout that we all know, like Fran or Helen or Diane or a Murph or something like that, you're probably not going to see the same workout either ever again or for years. So that's constantly varied. So it's always going to be different, always going to be changing. This is the part that people typically think is fun, which we have a podcast on that too, is variety fun.
Right.
Execute at a high intensity. High intensity, this is where it gets a little fuzzy because what is high intensity? High intensity can be measured in multiple different ways. High intensity is very relative. It's very subjective. My high intensity could be very different from yours, could be very different from John Doe who's walking into the gym, could be different from Jay Bradley's.
Yep.
Most likely is different from Jay Bradley's. Also different from like a Matt Fraser's. So constantly varied, always different workouts. Functional movement, exercise. Executed at a high intensity, basically me go fast, me make heart beat fast.
Yeah.
This can be done in multiple different formats if we're talking about CrossFit. So you'll see EMOMs, every minute on the minutes. You'll see AMRAPs, as many rounds and reps as possible. You'll see things for time. But normally, there's going to be some sort of task that you have to get done really fast, or there's going to be some sort of time interval you're working in to get as much work done as you can. So that's kind of where the high intensity part comes from. So multiple different formats. Sometimes you use intervals, sometimes you don't. HIIT training, my definition of this is much quicker. High intensity interval training. We talked about what high intensity is, it's very relative. This is a little bit more black and white than CrossFit is. Interval training, you're going to be doing some sort of intervals. So if you're going for a 20-minute AMRAP, that's not interval training because you're just going for 20 minutes. This doesn't necessarily account for your standard like functional movements. So like you could do sprints. You could do one sprint every 5 minutes, and that's going to be high intensity interval training because that's going to be really, really fast. And unless otherwise specified, from what I've seen, I don't know what you've seen, you could probably tell me a little bit more about this, but these are going to be shorter duration intervals of higher intensity. So think like boot camp workouts, like or Tabatas, like you're going to work for 20 or 30 seconds and you're going to rest for 10 seconds, right? So going back and forth like that. So that's kind of the difference between what CrossFit is and what high intensity interval training is. And that actually totally differs from what like linear style progressive programming is, which is actually what we're doing now. We're kind of seeing a mix of each of those definitions,
right?
But I'll let you take the stage.
Yeah, so at the beginning, when you asked the question, I just said, no, they're not the same thing. They certainly have and can be seen as similar in nature because they both have the literal two words the same in their definition, high intensity. High intensity interval training is the first two words, and then in the definition of what is CrossFit, it is two of the words in that definition. Constantly varied functional movement done at high intensity. So it's easy to understand and to see where the similarities and the confusion can come into play because they do share that. One of the things that I wanted to make sure and point out is while intensity can be, or intensity is a relative measurement, meaning that the intensity with which I go through an experience in a workout is going to be different if you are doing presumably the same workout. From a personal perspective, objectively, intensity is really just a measurement of power. Well, how much power are you putting out? So that is where the intensity component comes from. The place where they deviate the most, you already covered very, very well, is that traditional CrossFit is done as a task or time priority type workouts where it's 5 rounds for time or a 15-minute as many rounds as possible. Either A, I'm dictating the amount of work that you are going to do and saying that you are going to do it as fast as you can, or I'm dictating the time that you are going to be working for and you are doing as many rounds and repetitions of that sequence, whatever it is, that circuit, excuse me, to see how much work you can get done. And then there are actually calculators that you can use online. We used to play with this a lot, years and years and years ago when I first started doing CrossFit, where you could put in what the movement is, how tall you are, what's your body weight, are you male or female, what was your quote-unquote score, and then you could actually see what is the power measured in horsepower that you generated in a given workout. So if you did a 3-minute Fran and I did a 2-minute Fran, who actually generated more power? Well, I don't know. At face value, it would seem like, oh, well, Josh did better, but you actually weigh more. So the pull-ups become a big difference maker in terms of how much power you are actually generating in doing that 3 minutes of work. So there is that difference. So CrossFit traditionally has those different formats. Now, of course, there are EMOMs, but historically it's going to be do this work as fast as you can or work for this amount of time doing as much work as you can. Interval training, by definition, is always going to be an interval. So do this, start the stopwatch, stop the stopwatch, and then I'm going to have a measured work and rest interval. Or I'm going to say, do this amount of work versus work for this time, and then I'm going to tell you exactly how much you are going to be resting. Now, I know that this question didn't ask that, but one of the things to think about in order for, especially high-intensity interval training to be effective is that you want the work that you are doing to be repeatable and sustainable. So anybody can do 20 seconds of really hard work. Well, not anybody, but people probably that are listening can do 20 seconds of really hard work if they're strong enough, 20 seconds of really hard work, and rest, say, for 5 minutes, and then very few are going to have the faculties to be able to repeat that. So that is, therefore, unsustainable activity. And so in order for it to be interval training, you need to have some form of repeatability. So that means you need to have at least 2 intervals where you repeat the same score. And then the first interval that does not repeat that score, you have now entered unsustainable practice, and thus your power production and hence your intensity are trending downward. I don't know if that last little bit helped at all, but that's just what I wanted to make sure that I added in there.
No, I think it's really cool to include that, to draw comparisons to kind of what we're doing now, because I kind of mentioned what we're doing now is a little mix of both, you would say. I mean, we have interval workouts, and think Monday's workout, for example. If you were here, listeners, if you were here, it was every 4 minutes for 16 minutes.
Yep.
With the goal of doing better or just maintaining consistent times across each round. And so it had some higher skill movements, so there are going to be some things that get in the way, like there was some jump rope. Like if you break the jump rope, that's a couple extra seconds. But relatively, you're going to want to be able to go faster and have sustainable times across each one, rather than, okay, do each one as fast as you can, and then we're just going to see where the chips fall. Like we're going to see what happens. So we are getting interval training. I wouldn't necessarily call it high intensity. I'd probably call it regulating intensity, if that's a word, or if that's a term. Maybe we can trademark that one. Lately, if you've been here the last, this is the 6th week, so we'll say the last like 5.5 weeks, the variance hasn't been as high as what you might think of it to be. So we've had I said earlier, literally styled, progressive training that we're doing. In that, okay, we did goblet squats this first week. If you were here, awesome. It's not like you get to do front squats or back squats or deadlifts or whatever the next week. You're doing goblet squats again, but now we can progress you a little bit.
Right.
And you can see as you do that, one, it's definitely getting harder as the sets and reps or increases or maybe rest decreases, but you're also getting stronger with those movements. So there is progression, there is progress, there's strength that is being developed in those positions, in those movements. So I just think it's cool to, if you're not already, make somebody aware of that. Like that's kind of what we're doing, and drawing comparisons between that and the definitions we've already provided.
Yeah, so I think the big piece to take home about what you just said, and I like how you said it, is we're able to actually see and measure progress much more readily than just guessing and hoping that your metrics are actually improving.
And doing a benchmark like once every 6 months or once a year.
Exactly. And that's always been, an issue with not repeating things or not having a routine and always striving to do or to have that piece of constant variance is, okay, well, specifically, how am I getting better at this thing? Well, I don't know, it hasn't come up in 6 weeks. Okay, well then, how am I doing that now? It's very clearly laid out, and I said this several weeks ago on one of the episodes, but it's really intelligent design as I'm looking at where am I week 1, day 1, and where am I week 5, day 5.
Right. And
it's very easy to see, I've gotten better at this, I've gotten better at that. So, one note that you did have on here, not that I disagree with it, but I did want to provide an alternate perspective. You said, unless otherwise specified, it'll be shorter duration intervals of higher intensity.
For the HIIT training.
Yeah, for the HIIT training. I would say that the interval time doesn't really matter because, like we said, intensity is relative. So whether I'm doing, like today we had a 35-minute piece of work, if I rested and maintained and repeated it and did another 35 minutes of work, I'm still training those 2 intervals.
Yeah.
Now, from a intensity perspective, relative to what I would do in 10 minutes, sure, it's lower, but the amount of work that I'm doing, and thus the amount of power, because I'm working for much longer, could actually be greater. So it's not so much that it's the time that dictates the dose. There are other factors in it as well.
Gotcha. I guess my mind naturally went there because when I think HIIT training, I think sprints, boot camp style workouts, Tabatas, things where you're working for a relatively short amount of time, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 100-meter sprint, 10 seconds. It's things like that separated by X amount of rest, and that can be very variable. But as you just said, it's like, high intensity, that can change, based on multiple different factors. And so really anything you can make interval training. So
yeah,
cool.
That was a good one. I like that question.
Yeah, it was a good one. I like this sciencey definition stuff, which is good because that's what we talk about
right.
for the most part. So, all right. Listener question number 3. Let's see here. Josh, what do you do about ripped hands?
Number 1, don't rip your hands.
Yeah.
Don't rip them.
Don't let yourself get to the point of ripping your hands.
Funny story about this actually. One of the very first videos, I don't know if it was here, I think it was in this gym. It might have been the old gym, but I'm pretty sure it was in this gym. One of the very first videos that I ever made and posted on social media was about this, like how to grip the bar, specifically talking about pull-ups because I have had this question so many times over the years. But the first thing is, what is it that caused the rip, and then you kind of work backwards from there. And it's usually not like one factor, unless you did a workout that had 150 chest to bar pull-ups or something. It's like, all right, that's what caused the rip. I came in, my hands looked beautiful, fresh, calluses are shaved down, all that kind of stuff, and then I left and my hands were a bloody mess. Okay, well, it was just too much volume. You were not ready for it. So what do you do about ripped hands? I know I say it tongue-in-cheek, but it is the truth, is just don't rip in the first place, and then you don't actually have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So I would wager a guess that Jay probably being the exception, that I've done and do more bar work collectively than anybody else, and I can count on 2 hands the number of times I've ripped my hands probably ever.
Wow.
I don't rip that often, and a big place that I attribute that to is just gripping the bar properly. So Meaning, and I know people that are just listening can't see this, but like visually, if you are what I call over gripping on the bar to where at the base of your fingers you've got, you know, your knuckles where your finger meets like the palm of your hand, if that part of your hand is getting over the top, the vertical plane of the bar that you're hanging on, you're just setting yourself up for a world of hurt down the road. Like it's almost, if the question was, how can I guarantee that I'm going to grip my hands, that would probably be step one, is over grip on the bar. Mm-hmm. And we call that, because typically when people do that, they wrap their thumb on the top of the bar. The reason that you do that is it gives you a lot more torque. You know, you shorten the lever of your arm. And I know that sounds silly, it's only moving it a couple of inches, but it does provide a lot more grip strength. You can hang onto the bar longer, you can pull stronger, you can pull deeper onto your chest, all those things. But that's like a surefire way to grip. So if you go away from like actually it's not the monkey grip, it's the Lego man grip. But if you actually now come down onto, you know, what we would call monkey grip, where your thumb goes around the bar, and then that knuckle in the middle of your finger is actually at the top of the bar, that's a surefire way to not grip your hands, okay? So I do want to go down this road a little bit, because usually we can capture everybody, you know, with that. So there is that. How are you holding onto the bar? Then we get into looking like a Yeti with all the chalk that you use. The more chalk that you use, the more likely you are going to be to rip your hands. So if you combine an overuse of chalk with an over grip on the bar, you're just skyrocketing your chances to rip your hands.
Why does chalk do that?
So the purpose of chalk is to just remove the moisture, you know, from your hands. When people over chalk, what they're actually doing is limiting any movement, and you're increasing the friction between your hand and the bar. So it limits the movement that your hand can have on the bar. Said another way, it's increasing the friction because the force and momentum and everything is going to overpower the friction that the chalk is creating between hand and bar, and thus you are going to move on it, but because your hand is so dried out and because the friction is so great, the give is going to be in the skin of your hand. The skin of your hand is going to break before the bones in your wrist or the bones in your shoulder or your lat muscle or anything like that. So just keep that in mind. A lot of chalk plus an overgrip on the bar, your chances have just gone up like tenfold. Okay? So use a little bit of chalk, or, this is a wild idea, have some good grip strength that you take a long time to develop. And don't use chalk, and you'll be fine. Because if chalk is allowing you to go beyond your capability, here's a great one for you to resonate and marinate on for a little bit. If the chalk is allowing you to go above and beyond your current ability, you're not doing yourself any favors anyhow. So just don't do it. Anyway, so we'll just keep going down this road. So we've over-gripped, or we've added a bunch of chalk into the system. The other thing is, if we just kind of hit on this, if your grip strength is not such that you can hold on without feeling like you always have to re-grip. So if you're a person that gets up onto the bar and has to kind of re-grip your hands up there, then that is adding more friction, more movement between your hand and the bar. You're more likely to rip. So you've got all these compounding factors. The other thing to think about is the amount of movement that you are allowing to go on between hand and bar. So when I over grip, I can't have a lot of movement coming from the wrist because my wrist is almost sitting on top of that bar. So as I swing, the rotation has to come from my hand. And I can see your face, I don't know if anyone else can, but you're just grinding the palm of your hand against this bar, and you're just asking for a big rip. Versus if I go monkey grip with my thumb around, my knuckle on top, now all the movement is not coming from my hand stays steady, holds onto the bar, and the movement comes from my wrist and my shoulder. So I'm lessening the amount of movement between hand and bar, which means I'm taking it a little bit easier on my hand. So there's all those factors that lead up. So I again, tongue in cheek, what do you do about ripped hands? Well, don't rip in the first place. Well, okay, that sounds great, but I've already got ripped hands. Well, you need to take that into account and go back to the beginning, figure out why did you rip. Now, if you have ripped hands, what should I do? Don't get on the bar until your hands are completely cleared up.
Yeah.
And then don't do all the things that I just said that are going to lead you to rip. Now, if you're dealing with, man, like today, for instance, if you ripped your hands, I don't know what you would rip them on today, but let's just say that you did have ripped hands from yesterday plus today with the kettlebell swing. What should you do if it's bad? I might put some Neosporin on there, cover it up with a bandage during the day, let it breathe at night. What are some of the other things that I know we've had people use?
Dude, I use Prep H.
Yes, that's the other one, Preparation H. Yeah.
That is, out of all the things, like they make products that are usually just crazy concoctions of stuff that'll burn the heck out of your hands, or they'll make like, what is it, new skin?
New skin, oh man.
New skin.
Bite down on something hard if you're about to put some new skin on a ripped palm.
What I've seen the most success with, whether it was a shallow rip or a real deep rip, get some Prep H on there. It's gonna burn. Rub it in. You gotta
get it in there.
Get it in there. Embrace it for a second, because you know it's gonna burn. Get a Band-Aid on that. Go to sleep. Within 2 days, your hands will be good as new. Honestly, the worst part of it is buying the Prep H at Walgreens and telling them it's for your hands and not your booty. Yeah. But it is the best. Yeah, so hand care is, if you're going to be up on the bar, it is pretty important to take care of your hands. So, you know, when you get done with something that is grip intensive where you've been up on the bar, just take a look whenever you leave, or, you know, in the next 24 hours. If you see these big, rough, raised calluses on your hand, file them down a little bit, because the more like big raised callus that you have on your hand, that's like an invitation to the bar and anything else to say like, ooh, grab a hold of me. It's literally somewhere that the bar can just latch onto, and it will pull that right off. So if you can keep your hands fairly smooth, shave those calluses down, you're going to be in a good spot. But again, go back to what I said at the beginning, if you're over gripping, if you're using a bunch of chalk, if your grip is not strong enough, you're just setting yourself up for ripped hands. And I don't know about you, but it's not a good look to have these palms that are just all eaten up. It used to be like this masochistic badge of honor that people would post hands, and it always, like, deep in my soul, just made me shake my head like, you idiot. That is not something to be proud of. And don't celebrate that. So the first time I ever ripped my hands it was during an open workout, and it was 14.4, the one with the rowing, and then immediately into toes to bar, wall balls, power cleans, and muscle ups. And I was on the 20th muscle up in the last round. No, I'm just kidding. But I ripped on the last. I was like, man, you got deep into that workout. No, I remember when I scored in that workout, I got 20 of the 50 toes to bar. Which is just cool to think about and look back on now, compared to doing the workout in present day. But I had been a member at CFG for like 2 or 3 months. 3 months. 3 months now. I had not ripped my hands yet. Got up there, was doing some toes to bar. Dude, I took a picture. Look at this. My gosh. I got a picture for you. Gosh. I'm going to shake my head. There's 4 or 5 on each hand you can take a look at. Oh, man. But like exactly what you just said. Like, it's in the middle of my palm, so you know I was gripping the bar wrong. I was part of the gym for 3 months, right? So I didn't have the grip strength required to handle even 20 toes to bar, the score that I got in that workout. I remember Eric Crouch was judging me. And you can see that my hands are caked with chalk. Yeah. Caked with chalk. So it's funny, like I pulled the picture up, and as you were listing out all those things, I was like, did that? This picture right here. Yeah. That's the picture. But yeah, I remember just being like, what is? I thought I was like a leper. I was like, what is wrong with me? And man, that first shower afterwards. Oh, it is something else. So something actually, if you do get to the point of ripping your hands, as soon as the workout's done, or if the workout's done and your hands are just shredded or you have one rip, go into the bathroom and wash it immediately, because it's that first wash is the worst part.
Yeah.
And you don't want it to be when you're putting shampoo in your hair,
oh.
because that's going to hurt anyway.
Right.
But you need to get that first wash out of the way. So first wash, dry it up, make sure the area is clean, get some Prep H on there, bandage it up, keep it there for 2 days, don't touch a bar.
Yeah.
We'll set you up with some dumbbells instead of a barbell, we'll set you up with something else, because it's even something like, I've done burpees like a chimp before. Chimps should have hands like this. I've done burpees like that.
Your palm like
to
around.
protect my palm, dude. And like,
maybe you should have even been doing burpees.
Right? Like, just get me on the assault bike for 30 minutes, and like that'll be good. But it's not fun, and it's not cool.
No, it's not. So, what to do about ripped hands? Don't rip.
Last note I have, normally, if you feel a rip, you'll feel a rip coming on before it actually happens.
Yeah.
And even if you don't, a good tell is when you get off the bar, we've all done this, you get off the bar and we look at our hands like, why couldn't I have done another rep? And you're blaming your hands when really it's your fitness. But you're looking at your hands, like, if you look at your hands and you feel, okay, I felt, because you'll normally feel it below the surface.
Yeah.
Get on the ring, start doing ring rows instead of pull-ups. Because if you feel that and you have quite a bit of the workout to go, you're going to rip soon.
And trust me, everyone listening that just rolled their eyes at Mark saying, just get on the rings and do ring rows. I have been where you are, and I felt what you're feeling, and it is hard. It is a massive hit to the ego, especially like pull-ups are a big strength of mine. I can do big sets and go deep into workouts because of pull-up capacity, but I'll never forget, we were doing a workout. It had some farmer's carries, some pull-ups, and something else. We were going back and forth in the gym. It was one of the early workouts when we reopened last summer. And I hadn't done a lot of pull-ups in a while, so it came up in the workout, and I did, I think, the first set or two with them, and I felt a rip coming on. And I was like, man, I know if I was the coach, what I would tell my client would be, all right, we're going to go to the rings, and you're going to continue to get upper body pulling, because that was the intention for the remainder. And it was hard. I mean, it was, I mean, I did it, but man, it took a massive, massive hit to the ego to not, and not because of anybody else or any, but it was like me and, you know, what I know that I can do or have been able to do. But that was a big step in, you know, just maturing as a person, as a coach, all those types of things. So,
how do you build up that grip strength? How do you build up the ability to do more work on the bar? Is you
intelligent design and progression.
Yes, you intelligently do it. You don't just hop up and go, all right, I'm going to do 30.
Right.
It's like, well, let's see where you're at.
Yeah. Have you done 3 first?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. We got 3 questions done in that amount of time.
Yeah, we were killing it today. I'm going to actually, let's check the comments, see if anybody's there. Oh, nope, big surprise. All right, now I'm going to check my text messages, because I know I've gotten some texts about some questions, at least once or twice, or maybe they weren't actually questions, but they were just different notes.
And then, oh, nope, nothing again.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's it, folks.
I can't find it.
All right.
So sorry for the long space.
Yeah. Mark will edit that out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. I do want to thank our sponsor today, Short Media. Thank you for sponsoring this episode. It was bright and everybody could see me.
Yeah.
That's the one sponsor that we have.
And Reebok. I'm wearing Reebok shorts. Just Reebok.
Awesome.
Yeah. So thanks, Reebok.
Thank you.
Send us some more gear.
All right. Adios. Until next week.
5-star written review. Don't forget to do that. Josh, take it away.